Ancient Sumer, when you look at their tablets and like, what are they saying? And why would they dedicate so much time to talking about this stuff?
Around 2087 BCE, the Sumerian king Shulgi ordered a single clay tablet sealed under cedar resin and buried in the foundations of the great ziggurat of Nippur. It was never meant to be opened in his lifetime, or in any of the 41 centuries that followed. The instruction carved into the tablet's edge was simple: wait until the path comes round again. In 2019, NASA-grade imaging cracked the seal at the British Museum and read what was inside. What Shulgi claimed to have seen beneath the earth is not a story the official record of human history has any framework for explaining. The Forgotten Tablet. The tablet had been sitting in the basement of the British Museum for 143 years before Dr. Michael Westenra's team at Oxford pulled it. Catalogued in 1876 after being unearthed at Nippur in modern-day Iraq, the museum file described it as catastrophically damaged. The cuneiform was corrupted by time and moisture, the surface sealed beneath a layer of protective resin applied by Victorian conservators who feared the clay would crumble if anyone tried to clean it. It was photographed once.
If you see a cuneiform tablet for the first time, you're not likely to identify it as writing, and you certainly wouldn't know which way up it went.
Filed, forgotten. One more object in a collection of more than 130,000 untranslated Sumerian tablets gathering dust in climate control. The designation was MS-3848. The provenance was clean. The dating was verified. The writing was late Sumerian mixed with archaic Akkadian. But nobody had read it because nobody could. Here is what doesn't make sense about how it surfaced. The technology to read through the resin had existed since the early 2000s. The tablet had been identifiable in the catalog the entire time. There was no funding push, no academic priority, no public interest that should have moved it to the front of the queue. Westenra's team simply picked it up. Multispectral imaging, originally built by NASA to read mineral compositions on Mars, was pointed at a 4,000-year-old piece of fired clay, and the cuneiform impressions buried under the resin began to surface in infrared and ultraviolet at specific wavelengths. What appeared on the screen in front of Westenra that night was not what anyone had been expecting. It was not an administrative record. It was not a grain ledger or a temple inventory, which is what 90% of recovered Sumerian tablets turn out to be when somebody finally cracks them open.
It's a time capsule of information on stone tablets for us today to be able to decipher, break down, and understand, and that's what we're here to do now.
It was something else, something the field had never seen documented in this form before, something that would, by the end of the week, have Westenra calling colleagues at 3 a.m. to ask whether he was reading what he thought he was reading. It was a king's testimony, the king who saw them. There is a scribe sitting in a small room off the temple complex at Nippur in the 14th year of King Shulgi, and his hands are not steady. The tablet does not give his name. It gives only his task. He has been ordered by the king to write down everything Shulgi tells him, and then to seal the tablet with cedar resin and bitumen, and have it buried in the foundations of the ziggurat. The scribe is afraid. You can read it in the script itself. Cuneiform experts who have examined MS-3848 note that the impressions in the clay grow tighter and more pressed as the tablet continues, the way handwriting tightens when someone is rushing to finish before something happens. Shulgi is a real historical figure. His reign is documented in dozens of other tablets, year name records, and royal inscriptions. He ruled the third dynasty of Ur around 2087 BCE. He built roads. He codified laws. He claimed personal divinity in a way that even other Sumerian kings found unusual, and most kings at that time were claiming a lot. What the trembling scribe in that small room is recording is the king's account of what had happened 3 nights earlier. He has been at the temple complex for most of his life. He has copied tax records, marriage contracts, military rosters. He has never been asked to take dictation directly from the king. He has never been asked to sit alone in a room with a man who has not spoken for 3 days. He writes what Shulgi tells him as fast as his stylus can press the wet clay, because he has been told that when the tablet is finished, it will be sealed and buried, and he understands without being told that he is not meant to remember what he wrote. 3 beings, the scribe writes, descended into the city in the night, their craft silent as falling stars. They wore the faces of men, but stood taller than any warrior. They spoke the old tongue, the language of the first city, and they asked for Shulgi by name. The king was brought to them. He was then taken into a chamber beneath the great ziggurat. A chamber, the scribe insists in a phrase he repeats twice, that was not built by human hands. The walls of the chamber, the king tells the scribe, were not stone. They were something else, something that felt warm to the touch and did not cool when his hand moved away from it. When Shulgi came back out, he did not speak for 3 days. When he finally spoke, the first thing he did was call for the scribe. The beings he described, the Sumerians had a name for the visitors. They called them the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. The name appears in hundreds of tablets, in epics, in king lists, in religious texts.
The Anunnaki, description of Anunnaki, what it means is those from heaven to earth came, and the idea is that these advanced beings came down here and genetically engineered human beings.
Mainstream scholarship has classified them as deities for as long as Sumerian studies has been a field, gods in the metaphorical sense, personifications of natural forces. The sealed tablet does not treat them as gods. It treats them as a category of being, physical entities with origin, with biology, with technology. The text describes their craft, their tools, their height, the way they moved, the way they spoke, the kind of stone they touched and what the stone did when they touched it. There is no poetry. There is no allegory. It reads, line by line, like a debrief. Stay with me on this, because this is the part that doesn't fit any model. The Sumerians appeared in southern Mesopotamia around 4,500 BCE with no evolutionary predecessor. Archaeologists call this the Sumerian problem. One moment, there are scattered settlements of farmers along the Tigris and the Euphrates. The next, there is a fully formed civilization with written language, advanced mathematics, surgical medicine, irrigation engineering, metallurgy, urban planning, and astronomical observation, precise enough to track Venus through a 500-year cycle and stay accurate to within hours. They did not develop this. They appeared with it. And the Sumerians themselves told us where it came from. They wrote it down. They said the Anunnaki gave it to them. The Sumerian King List, one of the most studied historical documents from the ancient Near East, describes rulers who reigned for thousands of years before the Great Flood. Then it states, in a phrase that has been retranslated dozens of times but always comes out the same way, that the kingship was lowered from heaven. Not delivered, not inherited, lowered. After the flood, human kings reigned for normal human lifespans. The text draws a clean line between two eras. If you find yourself questioning how much of the official version of human history is documented and how much is filled in with assumption, subscribe. I break down a discovery like this every week. The ones that did not make it into your textbook because they did not fit the model. What was shown beneath the ground? This is the chamber. This is what the king saw. The scribe writes that Shulgi was placed before a wall that was not a wall, a surface that shone like polished copper but moved like water. On that surface, images appeared. The king saw the world from above, as a bird sees it, but higher, until the world became a sphere hanging in darkness.
What we're looking at here is a Sumerian tablet that actually shows the tree of life, flanked by divine beings. You can see here the Anunnaki on each side.
He was, the scribe writes, afraid at this moment. He had spent his life believing the world was flat, the way every king before him had believed it. He was being shown otherwise on a wall 4,000 years before the first human flew high enough to confirm it. He saw other spheres around it. He saw the path of the wandering stars, the planets, traced in light around a central sun. The Sumerians, mind you, were not supposed to know the planets moved around the sun. That model is supposed to wait another 4,000 years for Copernicus. Shulgi was being shown it on a wall in 2087 BCE. Then the visitors showed him a larger sphere, one he did not recognize. It was not on the same path as the others. It swung wide of them on a long elliptical arc that brought it close to the world of men only once in every cycle of 3,600 years. The visitors told him this sphere was their home. They told him the cycle was nearing its end. They were here to take measure of what humanity had become. They would return when the path brought them close again. And then they showed him exactly when. The king was shown the position of the stars on the night the path would open. He was shown a specific configuration, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars standing together in the constellation of the water bearer, which we now call Aquarius. Venus at the shoulder of the Seven Sisters, the cluster we now call the Pleiades. The precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, brought to a specific moment in its cycle. The scribe wrote all of it down, in the only system the Sumerians had, sexagesimal mathematics, base 60, the same system we still use for the minutes on a clock and the degrees in a circle, inherited from them. When West and Ra's team finished the translation in early 2020, they fed those coordinates into the same software NASA uses to back-calculate historical star positions. The configuration is rare. It does not repeat often. The last time it occurred was approximately 3100 BCE, the same moment the Sumerian civilization exploded into existence with no apparent precursor. The next time it occurs is 2029. There is one more detail from the chamber that matters here. While the visitors were showing Shulgi their orbital path, he noticed something they had not pointed out. The path of their home did not approach from the plane of the other planets. It came from above, from a region of sky that even modern astronomy surveys poorly. In 2016, two researchers at Caltech, Konstantin Batygin and Mike Brown, published a paper in the Astronomical Journal that has not been quietly resolved. From the clustered orbits of distant objects in the Kuiper Belt, they argued, a planet roughly 10 times the mass of Earth must exist on a highly elliptical orbit far beyond Neptune. They named it Planet 9. They have been searching for it ever since. They have not yet directly observed it. The orbit they predicted, in language that has nothing to do with Shulgi, runs through regions of sky that current surveys cover badly, from above the ecliptic, from the direction the king was shown. The paper that was buried. Weston Ra is in his Oxford office. 6 months later,
Sumerians are not the only culture that talks about this. Also in the Quran, it says that language was given to us by Allah.
Writing a footnote on page 14 of a paper he is about to submit to the Journal of Cuneiform Studies. It is late. His graduate assistant has gone home hours ago. He has been staring at the same screen, the same translated passage, for the better part of 3 nights. He has not slept properly since the imaging software finished its first pass on the cuneiform. He has read the same lines 4 times because the first 3 times he assumed he had translated them wrong. The title of the paper is almost defensively boring, Astronomical Precision in Late Sumerian Prognostication Texts. He is writing the footnote because he has to. He knows what he found. He cannot put it in the body of the paper. The reviewers would not let it through, so he buries it in a footnote where it will be technically published, technically on the record, and almost certainly missed. The footnote reads, "The precision of the astronomical calculations in MS 3848 exceeds the known capabilities of Sumerian observational astronomy by several orders of magnitude. No explanation consistent with current historical models accounts for this discrepancy." Translated out of academic register, that sentence says one thing: they should not have been able to calculate what they calculated, but they did. The paper went out. 12 people cited it. It disappeared into the stack of cuneiform papers that nobody reads. 6 months after publication, Weston Ra cleared out his office over a single weekend. He did not give a farewell talk. He did not finish his graduate students. He moved out of Oxford. His co-authors, Dr. Sarah Apprentice and Dr. Amir Nazari, have refused every interview request since. Apprentice, when pressed by a journalist outside a conference in 2022, said only that the translation stands as published. Interpretation, she said, was beyond their scope. That is not a thing archaeologists say. Interpretation is the job. A researcher in the US tried to reach Weston Ra by email about the orbital calculations in late 2021. The first message got a 1-line reply. The second message got no reply. The third message, sent a week later, got this: 4 words. We translated it correctly. Then he stopped responding. He has not responded since. The 3 signs. The magnetic North Pole is currently drifting towards Siberia at a rate of more than 30 miles per year, faster than at any point in measured human history. You can verify that tonight. The data is on the NOAA website. The pole that compasses point to is not where it was when your parents were born. It is moving. It is accelerating. The tablet's first sign reads like this: the lodestone will lose its way. The sky will burn with colors that have not been seen. The night will glow as if lit by an unseen sun. Birds will fall confused from the air, unable to find their migration paths. Auroras have been appearing since 2023 at latitudes where they have never been recorded in living memory. Florida, Mexico, northern India. Mass bird die-offs and migration collapses have been documented across 3 continents in the same window. Earth's magnetic field is weakening at an accelerating rate. The scribe is writing in 2087 BCE about a planetary navigation system going wrong, and the system he is describing is the one our airlines update their charts against every 6 months. The second sign in the tablet reads, "Mountains that have slept since the time of the great cold will awaken with fire. The seas will rise and swallow the coasts, where men built their towers of pride. The earth will groan with increasing fury." This is the part nobody talks about. Volcanic activity at long-dormant sites has increased measurably across the past decade. Sea levels are rising. Coastal cities are losing ground in measurable feet, not theoretical centimeters. Jakarta is sinking so fast the Indonesian government is moving the capital. Miami is flooding on sunny days from rising groundwater. The scribe is not making a vague apocalyptic gesture. He is naming 3 specific categories of geophysical event in the same order they appear in the IPCC reports we publish now. The third sign reads, "A voice that speaks without sound." Messages will move across the world without breath or paper, carried in the air itself. Men will speak to each other across great distances, as if they stood in the same room. The wisdom of the ancients will be available to any child who asks for it. A scribe in 2087 BCE could not have described the internet more cleanly if you handed him a definition. Smartphones, wireless transmission, search engines. Every word in that passage maps onto a piece of technology that did not exist 7 years ago in the form it exists now. The signs were never meant to be vague. They were meant to be specific enough that the people alive when the cycle closed would know what they were looking at. We are looking at them, the independent confirmations. The 2029 date in MS 3848 would be easier to dismiss if it stood alone. It does not. The Mayan long count calendar famously ended on a date that converted to December 2012. Several Mesoamerican specialists working from inscriptions at Tortuguero and Chichen Itza have argued the original conversion contained a 17-year offset. The corrected end date falls in 2029. Hopi prophecy describes the return of what their oral tradition calls the star people. The signs given for that return include a blue star appearing in the sky and a great purification. If an ice giant on an elliptical orbit beyond Neptune swung into the inner solar system, it would reflect sunlight as blue, the same color we see from Neptune itself. 3 different traditions, 3 different continents, 1 date. The thing Shulgi saw. This is what the visitors did not mean to show him. The scribe writes that while Shulgi was watching the moving wall, while the visitors were tracing the orbital path of their home and the configuration of stars that would open the cycle, the king's eye drifted to the corner of the image. There was another picture there. The visitors had not pointed at it. They had not called his attention to it. It was simply present, the way a map on a desk is present while you are talking about something else. The king saw, the scribe writes, the surface of the world as it would appear after the cleansing, if the cleansing came. The seas were not where they are now. The coasts were not where they are now. Cities Shulgi knew, cities he had built with his own hands, were beneath the water. New land had risen from the floor of the ocean in places he had never seen. The shapes of the continents were the same, but the edges had been moved. The scribe records that the king's voice broke when he described this part. He had to stop. The scribe waited. When the king started speaking again, he said only one thing about what he had seen in that corner of the moving wall. He said the city of Ur was gone. The visitors closed the image when they noticed him looking at it. They told him it was one possibility, not a certainty. The choice, they said, was not yet made. It would be made by what they found when they returned. If humanity had risen to the stars and learned to stop killing itself, the visitors would offer ascension, a second round of genetic intervention, an upgrade, extended lifespan, enhanced cognition, the unlocking of capacities they had left dormant in the original modification at the time of the mixing. If humanity had risen to the stars but was still at war, still poisoning the garden, the cleansing would come instead, reduce the population, wipe the slate, begin again with a selected remnant. The flood, written down in Sumerian 2,000 years before the biblical version, had been a previous cleansing. The next one, the visitors said, would not use water. Children of clay. That is what they called humanity in the chamber. Modeled from clay and the blood of a lesser god, the Sumerian texts say repeatedly, shaped to serve as workers. The Anunnaki had needed labor. They had engineered humans to provide it. And the king, when he came back up from beneath the earth, gave only one order before the chamber was sealed and the tablet was sealed with it. He ordered the granaries of Ur to be filled. The granaries of Ur, archaeologists have confirmed, were expanded dramatically during the last decade of Shulgi's reign. The expansion has never been explained. The standard interpretation is preparation for military campaigns that, on the available evidence, were never planned. Shulgi was not filling granaries for himself. He was not filling them for his sons. He was not filling them for his sons' sons. The grain he ordered stored, in volumes that would have outlasted any famine of his lifetime, was for a generation that had not yet been born. A generation he calculated would be alive 41 centuries after his own death. He knew the date the chamber had shown him. He did the math in his own system, in base 60, and he filled the granaries for the people he would never meet who would be standing under the sky on the night the alignment closed. He was filling them for the remnant, the second voice. There is one more passage in MS 3848 that almost no one outside the original translation team has read. It is in a different hand, a tighter, more nervous script that cuneiform experts identify as a different scribe added after Shulgi sealed the tablet. The second scribe writes in first person. He claims he saw the visitors leave. He writes that they did not depart the way they came. The craft that had brought them into Nippur lifted from the ground without sound and without flame. And it did not move up into the sky. It moved down, into a shaft that opened in the earth beneath the ziggurat foundation. A shaft that, he insists, had not been there before and was not there after. He describes the air around the shaft as bending, as if heat were rising from it, but there was no heat. He describes the stones around the opening as glowing faintly, like the embers of a fire that had burned out long ago. When the craft was gone, the shaft closed. The stones settled. The chamber returned to what it had been. Shulgi ordered everyone who had witnessed the departure to be removed from the temple. Some of them, the second scribe implies in language he cannot bring himself to make explicit, were not allowed to leave the temple at all. He survived only because he had been ordered to write it down. He ends with one sentence. It has been retranslated 3 times by 3 different teams. They all agree on the wording. They go down into the earth and they wait, and when the path opens again, they will come up. That is the line that broke Westenra. 6 years before the alignment. 6 years before the cycle, the king was shown in the chamber closes. 6 years before, whatever Shulgi watched moved down into the shaft, beneath Nippur is supposed to come back up. The tablet was sealed in 2087 BCE, so it would be opened now. The cuneiform contains the timing of when on its own internal logic. The technology to read it became available in the right window. The team that picked it up did not know what they had until the imaging software resolved the cuneiform on a screen in an Oxford office on a Tuesday evening in late 2019. And the lead translator on that team has been sitting in a house somewhere outside Oxford for the past 4 years, refusing to answer his email because he knows what the king saw. Of the 3 signs, the lodestone losing its way, the foundation shaking, the voice that speaks without sound, which one do you think we are watching arrive right now? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want to see the next discovery, click the next video on screen. The Egyptian DNA study turned up genetic markers in the pharaonic bloodlines that the geneticists cannot explain. And the story it tells about who the pharaohs actually were is stranger than this one.